Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. Click subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it is YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Good Pods. Pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find the Sonic Cinema Podcast, and I hope you continue to enjoy it. You can also check me out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. There you will find exclusive deep dives, Oscar discussion, film festival, short film discussion, and a lot more, as well as life soundtrack and leaving the collection whenever I get around to doing something for those. And that is at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. So this episode is we're gonna be talking about, in particular, we're going to be talking about a couple of movies that I've always really liked since the '90s that I really wanted to touch on, especially since one of them is turning 30 this year, and that is the double bill of Jack Ryan films that Harrison Ford made. Patriot Games in 1992 and Clear and Present Danger in 1994. Join me to discuss those films as well as maybe some other Jack Ryan discussions is a fellow film critic. He's been on the pod before. Please welcome back to the podcast, Kevin Thomas. Kevin, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So I remember, I know I my my mother, my grandfather, and we went to go see Patriot Games in theaters together, and I know I really loved it. It was my first real experience with Tom Clancy in terms of his type of political thriller that he was interested in making in his novels. I hadn't seen Hunt for Red October. I think I'd seen bits and pieces of it, but I'd never seen the entire thing. Um, and then, so a couple of years later, when Clear and Present Danger came out, it was really exciting to see Harrison Ford return to the character of Jack Ryan. And I've always been a big fan of these movies. Kevin, how did you come across these movies for the first time?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure my first experience with the Jack Ryan movies was The Sum of All Fears,
Mm-hmm.
the Ben Affleck reboot that they tried. Uh, they used to show it on TV all the time in the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
and I would DVR it because that Ben Affleck guy from the Daredevil movie you like is in it, so it must be good. And um, I it was one of those things where when I saw it when I was like 12 or 13, I was too young to get into it, and then when I saw it again when I was older, I liked it more because I could follow and understand it. I I think I saw The Hunt for Red October for the first time in high school, and I really liked it for the I really liked it for kind of the pacing of it. This is very it's I think it's I really like the tense atmosphere of it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, Sean Connery is the lead of that thing, not the Jack Ryan character, which I was fine with because Marco Ramius is very interesting and there's all the tension on the ship about it's like who the Russian agent is. But like but yeah, I mean I really enjoyed that. I have I I remember not really digging that the third act goes into more like action stuff because I thought the
Yeah.
tension of the first few stories was so great. I'm like, oh, do we really? It wasn't bad. I was just like, oh, do we really need this to end in a gunfight when so much of this is really good tension and conversations and just all
Yeah.
of that. And so I remember when I saw Patriot Games soon after, the first time I saw it, I didn't like it as much as Red October because it does have a very different sort of style to it. I think the pacing's a lot faster in that. and Harrison Ford plays Jack Ryan in a very different way than Alec Baldwin did.
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely that that kind of caught me off guard a little bit the first time I saw it. But on subsequent viewings, I've grown to appreciate it. It's like, oh no, it's this series is not concerned so much with like continuity at all. They're all just very like standalones, which I like.
Yeah.
And as a Harrison Ford or not even action movie, it's a Harrison Ford led thriller, I think Patriot Games is. I really like it because of the focus it has on him as a family man. I like how personal the story is for him. Like like focusing so much on his family and how closely they're tied into that story is the biggest strength of it for me. Uh, and the action in it I think is very. I like how the violence is portrayed very realistically and it's terrifying. It's not really meant to. It's not really entertaining. Like you're not meant to cheer at it, but it does its job of making you afraid for their lives.
Yeah.
And also, Samuel L. Jackson pops up for like 3 scenes, and you're like, oh, it's him. Oh, before he was super famous, just the guy who gets Jack Ryan a medal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when I was when I was rewatching Patriot Games recently, I really like. I noticed how much I liked just the family story, how it's very small and it's very small scale and very personal, focused on him just as, and this is what Harrison Ford was cast for a lot, just like as this family man who's in over his head, trying to
Mm-hmm.
fight against,
Yeah.
whoever the bad guy is. Like that's what he spent almost all of the '90s doing. And then What Lies Beneath just flipped that to great effect. But it was like, but yeah, like I think he's a really awesome fit for both of these movies because he's able to just come across as a regular person in the middle of all these like assassination attempts and government conspiracies and what have you. He's able to ground it
Yeah.
for us so it
Yeah.
doesn't become it never these don't feel they're fiction obviously, but they don't feel stupid or absurd because of
Mm-hmm.
how they're executed. Like okay, exaggerated, yes, but not like the suspension of disbelief is fully in place. Like it doesn't ask you to stretch it too much.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about Tom Clancy's thrillers, especially when they're brought to the screen, I think what makes them interesting is the fact that action does kind of almost get in the way of what we're most interested in with these movies. Like
Hmm.
we get interested in the political aspects, we get interested in the interactions between the characters, the motivations between the characters, to where action sequences almost feel very perfunctory and not particularly not particularly interesting compared to what we've seen throughout the rest of the film. You mentioned Hunt for Red October, and I think that's a great example. I think Patriot Games is a great example as well, where you there are certainly action sequences that take place throughout the rest of the movie, but I think especially in the third act there, it
Yeah.
really gets silly, and
Yeah, this
it almost
sorry, go ahead.
dulls what we're wanting out of that
Yeah,
climax.
I agree. I think that and the third act of Patriot Game is its weakest part because that's where it feels the most to me like a standard action movie, whereas the rest of it, again, like the action had been done in a way of like, oh, this is terrifying. Like, oh, his wife and child are about might die. It's like, oh, this is scary. Whereas the in the third act of it, it just feels like, oh, he needs to go around the house and it's storming outside and kill the bad guys. And I'm like, there's a way to make that setup terrifying too. Like it should be. You're at your house. You have people over. You know the power's out. It's storming outside. These people who have tried to take your life several times have found your home. Like that should be just as terrifying as the rest of it. But the way that they do it, just feels like somebody said, "We need to end this like a big action movie," but the movie hasn't really been an action movie yet. We need to end it like an action movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not. I don't know. It's not badly done. It's just not. It just doesn't feel in keeping with the rest of the movie to me as much,
Yeah.
and it makes it. Yeah, I mean, the story has to end with a confrontation between them, like a violent confrontation. That's what it's been building up to the entire time. I just wish they could have. I don't know if that's how the book ends, and so they was following the book, or if they made adaptational changes to it. But yeah, the third act of Patriot Games is kind of where it just falls off a little bit for me.
Yeah. Well,
Whereas yeah, whereas Clear and Present Danger, weirdly, I think it pulls off the big third act action thing a lot better.
yes. Yes, I would agree with that. And and it's funny because of the fact that I really like the house. I really like the stuff in the house in the third act
Yeah,
of Patriot Games.
yeah,
It's basically when they're in speedboats in a
yeah.
storm at the end. That's like,
That's what I was referring to. The
it's
speed,
like,
like the
what are
house
we
itself,
doing
the
here?
speedboat. Yeah, the speedboat stuff is what I meant. Like, yeah, the stuff in the house is fine. The
Yeah.
speedboat part specifically is what I was referring to, where I'm like, this feels too much like a traditional action
Yeah.
movie that doesn't fit with everything else. But yeah, the stuff in the house itself, like all the the tension is still in that section. And then he's got the gun people at his house. It's like, oh, we're still keeping it in a character place, and then bring out the speedboats,
Yeah.
and you're like, wait, okay, I guess we're doing this now. But yeah, I, but yeah, the fact that the fact that the his like the fact that they spend so much time building him up as a family man and taking like quiet moments after every instance of violence to just kind of let the emotional impact of that sink in with us and him.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that really makes it hit harder for me because I'm like, oh no, we're actually gonna, and we're taking this seriously. It's fun, yes, and there are a few lines of levity, I guess, but it's not
Mm,
like I appreciate that they're making a they want us to be emotionally invested in what's going on with him and his family. On the negative end of it, I think that the at the beginning of it when Sean Bean's brother is murdered, I feel like the movie wants us to feel sympathy for him in that moment, and then never again attempts that,
yeah.
which is a little it's a little weird to me if you're gonna put something like that in there. Like, I'm not gonna feel bad for the terrorist. Like,
No. No.
you why did you even
Well,
try to do that? Like,
I mean, this is where, I mean, because I know Tom Clancy was not particularly happy with this adaptation of Patriot Games. I
oh,
know he
oh,
wasn't
really?
he when he saw Alec Baldwin as Jack Ryan in Hunt for Red October, it seemed to be closer to what his vision of Ryan was. Then, I mean,
Okay.
this basically looks, what we get in Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger is basically Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan, and he's
Yes.
bringing the swagger that we're familiar with Harrison Ford bringing into the role. Now, I think I know what they in Clear and Present Danger, they got a little bit. I know Patriot Games because of the political aspects of the movie, because it deals with the
The
IRA,
IRA.
deals with
Yes.
some very tense modern politics at the
Of the
time
of
that isn't
yes.
as that is more that's harder to really wrap your head around than what we saw in the as far as the Cold War and Hunt for October versus the drug cartels in Clear and Present Danger. So I think it was harder for the movie to get into the politics of that as clearly as maybe it could have been.
Yeah, and I think they they have a noble stab at doing it. Like they don't like they do a good job of establishing that there is, like that the government is aware of the IRA and sort of the ping ponging around of how much do we acknowledge them, or did they do it, or did they not? Like they do a good job of building tension between Jack and like the political spokesman who's like, oh, well, they didn't. So like, no, they didn't. They always take credit for what they did, and they didn't say that they did it, so we're not gonna accuse them of doing it. Like I got a good sense of like, okay, this is a bunch of like kind of passing the ball back and forth between things. So the political aspect of the story is not ignored.
Yeah.
I just think that it's definitely there. Like it's a political thriller, but it's like it felt like something that probably was delved into deeper in the original book
Mm-hmm.
than it is in this. Uh, for clear and I'll say this for clear and present danger, it's almost as if they looked at Patriot Games and said people complained that the political element wasn't really explored enough, and so a lot of clear and present danger is about people standing around in the White House making political moves of like,
Yeah.
all right, we're gonna send a team over here and we're gonna make sure it's on my computer, and we're not going to, we're gonna tell the president about it, but not so much that there's plausible deniability, and we need to hire a dude to go out here and do it who's morally flexible. It's like, yeah, clear and present danger is so much more focused. I think it's interestingly a lot more of a cynical kind of movie, especially in terms of how it views like the government as a
Yeah.
whole, with Jack Ryan being the one like Boy Scout of it. And for the story they're telling, I think that's entirely appropriate
Mm-hmm.
because what the I can't this actor's name, the guy they got to play the main villainous American politician here. I can't believe I forgot his name. He was the guy in the Henry Czerny.
Yeah.
Henry
Yeah.
Czerny is one of the greatest blind ball actors.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Oh, he's fantastic
he
in this.
in this, yeah, he just uh from the moment he comes on with like his little like goblinish glasses, I'm like, oh, you just he just oozes evil
Mm-hmm.
in this. And yeah, like he's a great love to hate character, and I think he's really good at making sure that he comes across kind of like a chilling, believable person. He's not a
Yeah.
maniacal villain. He's just he's a guy who just will go to extreme measures to do what he thinks is right, it will, even if it could bite his government in the butt down the line.
Right.
And again, with as far as the drug cartels, it's like, you know, war on drugs persists,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, I think this is, I think this is a relatively like, I guess, respectful view of that. Like they don't do the Breaking Bad thing of, oh, it's in Mexico, let's make everything yellow looking.
Yeah. Well, this was
And
before that was really something that filmmakers
j-
did. Like Soderbergh,
yeah,
Steven Soderbergh really started that
with
trend with Traffic.
yeah, traffic is like, it's all over that.
Yeah.
Every scene of Benicio del Toro in that movie looks like he just stepped out of a a juice box of Capri Sun.
But no, I mean, I think the thing that I really like about Patriot Games is I like the fact that it is a personal, like, very much it. I mean, yes, you kind of wish the political stuff was on better footing, but admittedly, that the politics of the IRA and how Ireland and England have gone along or haven't gone along over the years. I mean, it's a complicated thing. So, I mean, I
Yes.
guess it makes sense to a certain extent that they would boil it down to kind of a personal back and forth between Ryan and Sean Miller, played by Sean Bean in Patriot Games. And I,
Yes.
I think with Clear and Present Danger, they do a very good job of, to your point, not portraying the war on drugs in a way that we're familiar with. And I think they also do a really good job of showing us the showing us an interesting side of it from the perspective of the drug dealer, and having the main drug dealer be somebody who he's ultimately not a good guy because of what he's doing, but he has a certain degree of morals that his right hand,
It's
who's
not.
manipulating everything, does not. And we get that paralleled in Washington, where Jack Jack is basically the one trying to do the right thing and trying to do it in the right way, in a way that makes sense to people, but everybody around him is trying to circumvent the system. And I love that dichotomy works so well in that movie.
Yeah, it's honestly kind of a I didn't realize that until you just mentioned it. But yeah, it's kind of a I think it's kind of a I don't know if I want to say subtle if it's not like it's I think it's there, but they don't overplay it.
Yeah.
And it's again, I think both of these movies respect your intelligence. Like they don't spoon feed you stuff. And yeah, like the portrayal of the main drug dealer is this. I mean, yeah, he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy because of what he's doing, but he's not like again. He feels more grounded
Yeah.
in how he's written
Mm.
than I was expecting,
It's not just a
which was
stereotype.
no. I don't think that there are any like I don't think that there are any like stereotypes in either of these movies. Like they're not. I mean, they're not all fleshed out, but they're not like,
Yeah.
oh, you're you're a drug dealer, so you must have do X, Y, and Z. It's like no, these are just people doing what they're just people doing what they do, and I think that's and I appreciate that. It makes the again, it just grounds the story more so that the stuff that is stretching plausibility is easier to buy. Uh, Also, I think it. I couldn't help thinking watching Clear and Present Danger, like so the characters that Willem Dafoe plays in here would later be played by Michael B. Jordan in I forgot the name of it, but like they
Oh.
yeah Michael B. Jordan. What it was an Amazon original thing from a couple years ago. I saw it. It was
Oh,
okay.
I can't remember what the name of it was. I know what you're talking about too, but let me look it up right quick. Beyond Remorse?
Yes,
Is
that's
that
it.
it? Or
Yeah,
something
that's
like
it.
that.
Or
Without
something
remorse.
remorse
Without
without
remorse.
remorse. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, without remorse. So yeah, when yeah Willem Dafoe's character showed up, and I just had a flashback to without remorse. Like, oh, cool. I mean, this both great actors. both very different ways of playing the character and what their
Mm-hmm.
story is. But yeah, for Willem Dafoe's part, I think I remember the first time I saw this. I saw Clear and Present Danger for the first time like 1 or 2 years ago, and because I'm so used to seeing Willem Dafoe play the bad guy in
Yeah.
things, when I saw that he was in it, I thought, oh, this is gonna be a showdown between Jack Ryan and him, and then it's really not. Like seeing Willem Dafoe play a morally gray but more on the side of good-ish guy
Yeah.
is still weird to me. Like I think I think really good performance, and
Yeah.
I like that he shows like he's morally flexible, but only up to a point. Like where it the last third of this where they're together, I think is really good because we spent so long putting the pieces on the board and moving them around to get here, and it hasn't overloaded us with action at all. Like to end in this situation where, yeah, there needs to be action here because if there's not, it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like they need to get them. Yeah, they need to get the military guys out of this situation. The government was going to leave them behind so that they wouldn't have to admit to wrongdoing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that yeah, like the fact that that's where it leads, it underscores one of the movie's themes about government corruption internally. It's like this is how far they'll go to not admit that they've messed up.
Yeah.
And luckily, this these guys were rescued by Ryan and Willem Dafoe. But yeah, I think they did a good job of like giving us like the action climax without sacrificing its thematic point that's been driving
Well,
all this.
and this one makes more thematic sense, more story wise sense than the
Hmm.
one in Patriot Games. Like the one in
Yeah.
Patriot, the speedboats in Patriot Games just feels very tacked on. This one feels
Oh
very
yeah.
natural to the way the story unfolds. And I think the thing that makes, it's funny. I think I will always prefer Patreon games to a certain degree, but I understand why Clear and Present Danger is probably a bit more respected from people, and
Hmm.
it's because of the fact that it's going to the it's essentially doing the same thing with Ford's Jack Ryan that we saw Alec Baldwin's Jack Ryan in Red October, where it's a story that Jack Ryan just happens to be in the middle of, rather than it's a story about him. And I think that's the
Yeah.
thing about Patriots games. As much as I really like it, it's ultimately a Jack Ryan story. It's like, well, no, that's not necessarily what
These
these stories
are,
should be. So,
and I mean, I think too that I think I'm kind of watching these two back to back was very interesting to me because I think in terms of like from a character perspective, I like Patriot games a lot more because
yeah.
it just spends more time on that. Like if I want to watch the Jack Ryan adventure that's more about like the character stuff, I will turn that on. If I want to watch a Jack Ryan movie that I think has a more engaging story for me, then Clear and
Mhm.
Present Danger wins out. They're both very good at what elements they emphasize,
Yeah.
but it's different. They're they're similar and different. Like Philip Noyce directed both of these,
Mhm.
and I think he maintains the style that he brings to them over the course of both. It's
Yeah.
very different from what John McTiernan does. It's very different from what Bill Allen Robinson does, and it's quite different from what Kenneth Branagh would do.
Yeah.
But it's like, but yeah, like like both of them. I think because of how the stories are executed, like it just depends on what you're looking for as a viewer of one of these. Like if you like a smaller story, then Patriot Games is going to be the one I suggest. If you want something with a bit more of a political edge to it, then clear, with a bit more intrigue than Clear and Present Danger would be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Philip Noyce, yeah, this was my first. These two movies were my first time experiencing some of his work, and there's still some of his biggest work that I haven't seen, but especially Dead Calm. But as far as his Hollywood stuff, in addition to these movies, he also did Sliver. In between these, he did The Saint, The Bone Collector. He did
Oh, okay. Yeah, the
Salt.
Bone. Okay. Yeah, I have the Bone Collector as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty solid movie.
Yeah, and Sold is a pretty good movie as well. And in 2002, he also did Rapid Proof Fence, which was a more Australian production,
Mm.
as well as The Quiet American with Michael Caine.
Kane and Brendan Fraser. I've a few years ago I heard like I've known about the Quiet American existing for years, but I've never gotten around to seeing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I like Michael Caine. I like Brendan Fraser, so I'll get to it eventually. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's well worth checking out. But yeah, I mean, you look at he's really, I think the thing about Noise that is really good about good about these movies and what separates his approach from McTiernan's is the fact that he seems to really appreciate the ways in which, for the most part, I think for the most part, he appreciates the ways in which action fits into these, and the ways, and when it doesn't. I mean, I think in Clear and Present Danger, I think arguably the most suspenseful scene in the entire movie is when we have Ritter and Ryan going at one another at their respective computers when
Oh
Ritter
yeah,
is
that.
trying
Oh yeah,
to
that.
delete
Yes, I
everything.
agree. I that so that scene is both extremely tense and also mildly funny to me
Yeah.
simultaneously because it's really tense because of what's happening and like uh, and all the intrigue and tension built up. But it's also really funny because I know it was released in 1994. I know computers were very, very different in 1994. But I'm watching this and I'm going like, things don't delete like that. They would just be gone. Like you're like
Right.
it's watching the entire.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things of like it's a piece of the time. So it's not a criticism. It's just things don't work like that anymore. Like
Yeah.
everything around a computer in this movie, it's it's like oh man, no wonder it took so long for you guys to find anything. Um, yeah, but yeah, joking aside, that scene is really great because it's like, yeah, and then it's really great not only because of the tension within it, but also what the scene that happens right after it, where they're actually like going back and forth at each other about what just happened.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, it's like those two scenes really build on each other
Hmm.
well, and yeah, like it just underscores it just really helps underscore the idea of him being like the lone good guy in this situation
Right.
against the government who is in the wrong here.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
don't think, or sorry, go ahead.
I mean, one of the things I like in Clear and Present Danger so much is that there is a personal aspect in this movie, and it comes from his mentor James Greer, played by James Earl Jones,
Yeah, that's a
being
really good
sick
element
and
of
then
it.
dying. And I mean,
Yeah.
he comes from the same perspective of right and wrong that Greer does, and
Mhm.
the regular politicians, just the people who are more politically minded in this movie, whether it's Harris Yulin as Cutter, Ritter, and then the president, played by Donald Moffat, um, they are people who are looking at things from a completely different perspective. And that's where the personal aspect comes in with this. And so when after Greer dies, it's like he is the only one who can truly feel like he can do the right thing.
Yeah, and I like that. Yeah, and I like that I really like the relationship between him and Greer in both of these, and
Yeah.
especially with this one, it even though he's not in it very much, I think the scenes they have here do a good job of just highlighting how, like the mentor mentee relationship, like how much he
Yes.
has taught him before he leaves, and that like it was one of his final scenes by his bedside where he's like, you spend your entire life doing something, doing this and hoping that you made a positive impact
Yeah.
on it. It's like that, yeah, like it was a really, I mean, yeah, it's just a really good use of the character in a small way,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that yeah, like I think it does hit a little bit when he dies, not only because of this movie and what's been going on and what it means thematically for this story, but also because we've seen him with Ryan since Red for October. We spent three
Yeah.
movies with him, and so we kind of know and like him, and it always sucks when James Earl Jones dies in a movie. So yeah, so yeah, the personal element is definitely between the two of them. It's just the B side of
Yeah.
this,
Yeah. Yeah.
which again I think for the story that they want to tell is fine. If they had tried to focus this too much on that, they could have lost the wider scope of it, and that would have been a problem. Also, between like Patriot Games and Hocus Pocus and this, Thora Birch had a very intense early '90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when she showed up, I was like, man, last year, man, you getting shot at by Sean Bean this year. Next year, Beth Midler's gonna be trying to suck your soul out. Are you gonna be okay?
Well, and at the end of the decade, she was in American Beauty,
I
so
mean,
it kind of makes a lot of
oh
sense that when
man,
we see her character in Ghost World, she's so just disaffected with life in general. Um,
I still need to see that. So
oh,
like,
Ghost World
but
is so good.
but yeah, like I just yeah, for forever I knew her as the little girl from Hocus Pocus, and
Yeah,
so when I saw her in these and American Beauty, especially American Beauty, it was very weird. I'm like, oh, you grew up,
yeah,
and oh, I don't. Why are you here? I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, but no, but yeah, I think as far as like cute kids, she does fine. They don't ask her to do a whole bunch, and she's there for like 10 minutes, and she's fine.
mm,
I also like Ann Archer's good
yeah.
as his wife.
She is really good as Catherine Ryan in this. She's a good foil for Jack. So
They're seeing their relationship just play out. It's like I think it's written solidly,
yeah,
and he's more stoic, whereas she's a bit more chippy, I guess. Just to balance him out. And
mm-hmm.
yeah, like, again, I really like how Patriot Games opens with he's on the phone, just kind of like, hey, can you like get a new fish in case the old one died? And they're just playing Monopoly together.
Yeah,
It establishes right from the beginning
yeah,
this is what the focus of it is going to be.
mm-hmm.
And I think it's a good way to also like differentiate how he's going to play the character differently than Alec Baldwin
Yes,
did. And the way that Alec Baldwin played it was great as well. Like I think
yes,
he's great. He's amazing in that movie. It's just we don't learn a lot about him in it, I think Alec Baldwin does a lot. He comes across a lot more as like an analyst or a nerd
Yes.
than I
Yes.
think Ford ever could.
Hmm.
And interestingly, apparently Harrison Ford was their first choice for Hunter Red October, but he turned it down because he thought it focused too much on the Marco Ramius character and not enough on Jack Ryan.
Right.
So, which I was like, yeah, I understand. Like if I was told I'm gonna be starring as Jack Ryan and I read that script, I'm like, I mean, yeah, I'm in it, but
Yeah.
uh this Sean Connery, the world's most convincing Russian, is the main character, not me. Yeah, so I just yeah, Sean Connery in that is he's great, but he's not Russian.
I mean, I respect the fact that he's at least not really trying to do a Russian accent. I mean,
Oh, oh, yeah,
he
he
just keeps with his Scottish
what?
his
Yeah.
natural Scottish accent, and it's like, okay, I'm fine. I'm fine
Oh
with
yeah,
this.
yeah. It's a great movie. It 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 dinged me for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then I got used to it. It's like, look,
Yeah.
I would much rather him use his normal speaking voice than attempt to combine it with a Russian one.
Oh yeah, it would have been
Like,
unlistenable.
yeah, like if he had tried to do a Russian accent, it would have been like,
Mm,
cut back to Jack Ryan immediately.
yeah, exactly. No.
But yeah, like I think, and yeah, I think that I think the how Red October goes is definitely more about like this building the suspense, and again, a lot of the like behind the scenes stuff of what goes on in between government operations and missions and stuff like that. Like, how do we get things moving?
Yeah.
Just showing us all of that.
Mhm.
Whereas the two Harrison Ford ones are, Patriot Games is more of a small scale personal story, and Going Present Danger is a wider ranging, like, political one. Like, they're all suspenseful, but
Right.
they emphasize different things, and
Yeah.
it makes each of them distinct, which I really really like.
No, I agree with that. And no, I mean, I think what's kind of interesting. I mean, admittedly, it's been a while since I've seen some of All Fear. Well, it's been a while since I've seen some of All Fears and
Yeah,
Shadow Recruit, the
Shadow.
Chris Pine one.
Yes,
And I've never watched the John Krasinski series on
I.
Prime.
Mhm.
But I think it's interesting because of the fact that I don't know that I would say that any of the actors were necessarily bad choices for the role.
No.
Like I said, it's been a while since I've seen some of All Fear, so I'm not sure how I'd
Yeah.
feel about that. But
Not Ben
given the
Affleck.
type
Yeah.
of story that they're doing with that, it makes a little bit more sense that he would be the choice.
Yeah, like, then I think Ben Affleck is I think Ben Affleck is okay
Yeah.
in the like as a younger version of him. It's I think he's fine. I think it helps a lot that he has Morgan Freeman to work off of
Yes.
through most of that, because Morgan Freeman is just the better of the two at that time. And
Mm,
not that Morgan Freeman ever got bad, but like Ben Affleck got better
yes.
as time went on. And but yeah, like the yeah the but yeah the fact that Ben Affleck is so young and not really the way he's written in that story is not knowing how anything works. I think Affleck is well chosen for that, and then he messes up, and then he slowly learns
Hmm.
as he goes into it. And I think it would have been interesting had they made another Ben Affleck one like they intended to. Like it was supposed to be a total reboot with Ben Affleck spearheading it.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, I think it underperformed financially, and the critic reviews were mixed because of the time it was released, which I understand. And so they didn't do anymore. It would have been interesting to see if Ben Affleck could have grown like if he would have, or just how different his career would be if he had done another Jack Ryan movie.
Yeah. No, it would have
And
been
then
no, it would have been interesting because I mean it was at that point in time where Hollywood was basically putting Ben Affleck in as much as they could. I mean, he was
yeah,
in that role. He was in that period of his career after he blew up with Goodwill Hunting and Kevin Smith's films and stuff like
oh
that.
yeah,
So, I mean, and Armageddon and all of that. So, it were
yeah. I
basically
mean
just
he,
throwing him at everything.
yeah. I mean I think that was in like 2002, and then his 2003 was insane. He was
Yeah.
like that was the year of, I believe Paycheck was that year,
Yep.
and Geely and Daredevil
Yeah.
back to back to back. I I have not seen Geely out of choice. I can defend those other two movies as being like fun to watch, not
Yeah.
necessarily great, but like
Yeah.
I enjoy Daredevil mostly due to major nostalgia, which yeah, and Paycheck, which I think is loopy enough to be fun.
Mhm.
Also John, yeah, just the way that John Woo handled that
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. When I saw John Woo, I rewatched it. And it was one of those that like they showed on TV all the time, and I didn't fully get when I was 12 or whatever. But then I rewatched it a couple years ago, and I'm like, oh, John Woo is putting style all over this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
fine. Oh, we're fine.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's no, I mean, it's and I think to kind of bring it back to the 90s in particular, I mean, I do think I think depending on what you want out of the character, it kind of depends on how you view all of the actors who played them, right? I
Yeah,
mean, and
it's yes.
I think for me, being somebody who grew up with Han Solo and Harrison and Indiana Jones and all that stuff, it's like I think to a certain extent, it's like I resonate more towards the Harrison Ford Jack Ryan's because I am a Harrison Ford fan and I like what he brings to that type of role, these type of roles. And so him being in this and then in the middle he had The Fugitive, which just was one of the
That's
biggest
great.
non-indie, non-Star Wars hits of his career. It's
Mhm.
just one of those things where I mean, I just really connect with his personality more than I do any of these other actors.
Ye- I agree. I agree. I think Harrison. I think it's yeah. I think every actor who's played Jack Ryan has brought a little bit of their own like of they've been lucky enough to cast actors who all have a very distinctive screen presence to them and a very distinctive kind of personality that they bring.
Yeah.
And I think Harrison Ford I think does the best job at bringing like this kind of masculinity, but also emotional vulnerability to him, where it's like he looks good in the action scenes, but he also is really good at handling the dramatic aspects of this.
Mhm.
So again, he just feels like I feel like Ford's Ryan feels like the most well-rounded iteration of the character
Yeah.
from what I've seen. And I saw the first season of the John Krasinski show. I thought it was I thought it was entertaining enough, like not exactly memorable, but it was like it was fine. It was a fine like action political show. And the Chris Pine one, uh, Shadow Recruit, Kenneth Branagh should not have played the villain role at all.
Yeah.
It's I don't I don't think that movie knows who it's trying to be for.
Mhm.
It comes across like, oh, we got that dude who's hot from the Star Trek movies, so the young people will come in. But the
Right.
story is all about crashing the world financial market, so the 50-year-old guys will come in, and you're like, but 50-year-old men don't care who Chris Pine is.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is it's like I mean, I understand he was just coming off of Thor, but it's like,
Yeah,
why was Kenneth Branagh your choice to
direct
direct
that, like,
direct that? That's not really,
and
it's
and
not
even then,
really
like,
what he does.
his no, and even then, like, I remember this like from the director of Thor, where even at the time when Thor came out, people were like, "Oh, it's fine. Like it's entertaining. Like it was a fine movie,
Yeah.
but like it wasn't a huge. I don't think it was a huge like, oh man, everybody saw it, everybody loved it. Like it wasn't the kind of movie where I would say, oh, hire this director on our sort of workman-like action script here to elevate it up. And I think his direction on it is good, other than himself. But it's like, other than himself, I think the direction of the movie and all the actors in it is fine.
Yeah.
Like I think Keira Knightley's American accent holds up surprisingly well,
Mm-hmm.
and Kevin Costner is Kevin Costner is Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
Um, I preferred James Earl Jones and Morgan Freeman considerably more. Not I like Kevin Costner as an actor, but I feel like he didn't bring enough personality to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other thing is, I remember like Shadow Recruit ends like, "We're gonna get a sequel, you guys, right?" I'm like, no, no. I mean, I own all five of them, so I get enjoyment out of each of these.
Right.
And again, for what Chris Pine brings to it, I think that Chris Pine does a good job of like, again, an even younger interpretation of him. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
really, really green. Like
Yeah.
there's a really great scene after he had to like kill a guy in a bathroom where he calls his handler on the phone and is panicking and freaking out, like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? You need to wait. Yeah, just the frustration and just panic of that. He does a good job. Like, oh yeah, this is the first time you've ever had to kill somebody out in the field. You're just used to being an analyst at your desk, and now
Yeah.
you have to be in the action. But yeah, I think it's great that Harrison Ford can say that he's played three of the most iconic action heroes.
Yeah.
Like like he's done Jack Ryan, Indiana Jones, and Han Solo, and made all of them feel different from each other.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, just to as as we get to the point of wrapping this up, I do want to bring it back to Patriot Games and Current Present Danger. Just a couple of things that
Mhm.
we haven't gotten to yet that we've talked about that we haven't talked about. The You've mentioned to a certain extent some of the depth in the cast, like you mentioned Samuel L. Jackson being in Patriot Games. We'll also get Richard Harris in Patriot Games as an IRA
Yeah.
spokesman.
Yes.
Um, Ted Raimi is in these movies as one of the
Oh
analysts,
yeah.
and it's like
Uh
as one of the computer nerds, and
yes.
it's just absolutely fantastic to see all of these characters in this movie, in these
I mean,
movies.
yeah, and it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's yeah, and again, I think it's just interesting to watch these now where we don't really. I know that like every film critic ever has been ballyhooing this off of Pride Rock this past 5 years, but we don't really get like action movies like these
No,
anymore. They're just
no,
kind of mid-budget, very star-driven things that are aimed at adults. I
yeah,
mean, we get some, but it's not like every other week, oh, we've got a new 45, 60, 70 million dollar
yeah,
star movie coming out for, for your parents to go and see.
right,
And even the ones and even when they do make that, like, you know, Fly Me to the Moon is out right now,
yeah,
and my parents went to go see that. I went to go see it, and the elderly people in my theater went to go see it. But it's I don't know how many more of those we're going to get this year.
Right.
And if they made more Jack Ryan movies now, they'd probably go to like Amazon or something.
Yeah, it would be. I was thinking about that. It'd be difficult, I think, to really, because of how chaotic things in the real world politics are now, it'd be very
Yeah.
difficult to do a Jack Ryan type movie nowadays because of the fact that
Ye-
I don't know how you can, I don't know how it would compare to what we see in real life. I think it would be
Yeah.
very difficult to do a movie like this now.
And yeah, because I think that I don't know what you even have the story be because so much insanity has happened in the world
Yeah.
in the past several years where it's like anything you come up with is gonna be compared to something that's happening in the real world that's even nuttier.
Yeah, exactly.
And will it would it be considered entertaining at this point by enough people? I mean, I would go for it because I'm like, all right, I like these kinds of political thrillers and stuff. But like, would enough people want to be entertained by a politically tinged story at this point when all of real world politics is kind of insane?
Yeah. No, exactly. No, I mean, absolutely. And the one last thing I do want to mention is the score in both of these. The
Yeah,
wonderful music by James Horner. I absolutely, this was where I really started to take notice of him as a composer, and I just absolutely adore his. Even now, I just love his scores for Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. He was such a good choice for both of these.
yeah, I agree. The music in these does a lot of the heavy lifting. You know, and I think his the score is quite varied. Like you've got like the action cues, you've got the softer emotional cues going on, and they know when not to play music as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a really well balanced score. There's yeah, it just fits all the scenes where it's present really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I don't think I noticed James Horner as a composer until he did Avatar.
Oh wow.
Well, I was 14 years old at the time when that came out, so I would have been just getting into like,
Yeah.
oh, people who make these things. Yeah, I think Avatar was the first score where I really noticed him, and then I've gone back and listened and seen more movies that he did. I don't know, he was really great.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um no, I it was no, it's no, it's these two movies in particular. I mean, we've touched into a lot of different aspects of the Jack Ryan movies, and it's weird because you can't really consider it's a franchise, but it's not really a franchise because there have been so many different versions. It's kind of like James Bond in that way, where because so many people played the character, doesn't necessarily have a strict continuity to it. But
And yeah, I think that's actually a strength of these movies, like all of them, is that you could turn any of them on, and because they're so standalone and not concerned with continuity across multiple movies, like you could watch any one of them without knowledge of the previous ones and still get an entertaining time.
yeah,
I think that that makes them very refreshing
hmm
now. Like, oh, I didn't have to remember everything from Hunt for Red October to understand the clear and present danger.
yeah,
That's
exactly,
nice.
exactly,
Um, and again, like two of these five are attempted reboots, so you would just if they had continuity, you would just scrub them anyway.
yeah,
But it's like, but yeah, I think that both of these have largely held up because they're good scripts, they're very well cast actors, and their stories are very well executed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would agree with that. And yeah, I think I'm pretty much done with everything I really wanted to say about these. Kevin, before we go, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and occasionally Threads. Uh, my Facebook is Kevin the Critic. Twitter is at Kevin underscore the Critic. Instagram, Kevin the Critic, all one word. And you can find my film review blog, kevincritic.com, with links to all of those pages, as well as my full written reviews of new movies.
Excellent. Well, Kevin, thank you once again for joining me. It's always great to talk to you, and yeah, I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank Kevin for once again joining me and having a good discussion with a about a character that it's funny because I've never really looked at myself as a big Jack Ryan character as a big Jack Ryan fan, but I think it's the way the characters come been played was kind of interesting, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this. Plus, talking about Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger, which I really enjoy. That's going to be it for this episode of the Sonic Cinema podcast. I am looking forward to more of the discussions we'll have coming up here. And once again, wherever you click subscribe, rate, and review, listen to podcast, please do. Check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema and also at www.sonic-cinema.com. Thank you very much.